everyone. In today's video, I will go over how to make Kiki's accessories from Kiki's Delivery. This video will go in detail over how I modified her broom, her radio, her orange bag, and her red bow. If this is something that interests you, then please like this video and leave a comment down below. Also, turn on the notification bell and please give my channel a follow. It really means a lot to me. Without further ado, let's get into how I made all these things. So, I'm going to show you how to take a regular broom. I think I paid $6 for this one at a local handy shop and turned it into witch broom.
Okay, so first things first, we want to protect our workspace. I laid down a big garbage bag down where I was working, as I knew the broom was going to shed quite a bit as I was fussing with it. Next, I took some general purpose scissors and started cutting away the stitches along the flat edge of the broom. Be careful when doing this, as the plastic thread can be quite thick and strong and difficult to cut through. Just go slow and take your time. The more patient you are while going about doing this, the less the broom will shed in the process. Once that was done, I tried to take some craft wire I had in my stash to force the broom back into a rounded bundle. Unfortunately, my wire proved to be too weak and broke once the tension got to where I wanted. So instead, I used a few zip ties I had. This worked much better, and I was able to get a nice tight fit around the broom bristles. I then started to attach some rope cording using hot glue to cover the zip ties and metal wire on the broom. I used a lot of hot glue in the beginning to get a nice secure hold, and then less and less as I finished wrapping the cording. As always, be careful when using hot glue and do your best not to burn your fingers.
So, part number 2 is her bag, her bright orange bag, and this is probably the one bit that I've been the most excited to make because I've never made a bag like this, and I really like taking on new projects that I haven't done before. It gives you an opportunity to learn. So, to start, I made a paper mock-up. So I have decided to make this a bit more structured than in the anime, but I mean, the thing with anime is that it doesn't show any seam lines, it doesn't show any stitching, it doesn't really show the mechanics of how a costume or its different pieces work. I decided to make this more of a kind of like a briefcase slash duffel bag with a little bit more structure to it. So I have the side pieces here. It's a little wider along the bottom than it is on the sides. I have a nice big flap for the front, and I'll have a big strap coming around either side. I also got all the goodies to go along with it, so this is exciting. I have a nice big magnetic snap for closing the bag, and I got some, what are these, 1 1/8 half ball cover buttons. So these I'll cover in the orange fabric because her bag has a nice big round button, and this will go right in front of that magnet snap that'll keep the bag closed. And then I also am going to put one of these on either side of the bag for the strap. And then I'm going to put an adjustable side buckle, so I can adjust the length of the bag. So if you want a little bit shorter, you can do that. If you want longer, the options are open. So we'll go through that together and figure that out together, and then hopefully you can make it for yourself. So let's get to it. Okay, so day 2 here. I did a little bit overnight. I took my paper pattern pieces that I showed you of my bag mock-up and I cut them apart, and then I cut out the individual pieces here. So I have 3 of each of these pieces. This is the back of the bag and then the flap that folds over into the front. So I have some of this, it's kind of like 1/8 of an inch foam, maybe 1/4 of an inch, and it's for putting in bags and such, just to give it a bit of structure. And then I have 2 of these cut, and then I decided to put a little pocket on the inside of the bag, totally optional. I just went ahead and did that last night. And then we have the front of the bag here, and then we have the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew these top pieces together, which will be the lining, and then I'll show you how that looks, and then we can go from there.
So as I was saying before, I started with sewing the lining pieces together. I sewed the bottom strip to the back piece first, good sides facing, and then sewed the other side of the bottom strip to the front section of the bag. All of the seams were sewn with a basic straight stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Sewing this can be a bit tricky, especially around the bottom rounded edges of the bag. So make sure to go nice and slow, and making sure to lift up the pressure foot and easing the fabric every few inches in order to get a nice even seam. Once the lining was sewn together, I made sure to trim the excess seam allowance with pinking shears. This allows the curved edge to sit nicely without any puckering.
Okay, so these are the outside 2 layers. I have the outside orange pinned to this foam. This is the good side, obviously. This is the inside or the bad side. So I have the bottom pinned along the back and the top flap. So I'll sew along this. And then once that's done, I will put the piece that goes here and again sew them good to good, orange to orange, so that the foam is showing on the outside. And then we'll go ahead and we'll flip it out, we'll press it out, give it a good steam, see how that works. Hopefully I don't have to go and buy some like fabric adhesive to kind of temporarily glue this orange to the foam. We'll see, fingers crossed. We'll sew it, give it a press, give it a look, and go from there.
Just like when I was sewing the lining, I made sure to go nice and slow while doing this. The foam has a bit of give while the fabric does not, so I have to occasionally stop and make sure that the orange fabric wasn't getting bunched up as I was sewing along.
Okay, so this is what I have so far. This is that seam I just sewed, and I've just popped it inside out here. You can see this is the inside, and it's already looking so nice. I'm quite happy with it. And this is without even trimming any of the excess bulk from the inside. So now you can really see the purpose of using this foam is that it really adds a lot of nice structure to the bag. Let's go ahead and we'll add the front piece here, and then we'll look and see how it looks from there.
But I would suggest, if you're going to make a bag like this, that you bite the bullet and purchase some spray fabric adhesive. This will temporarily attach the fashion fabric to your foam and make sewing much easier. Alternatively, you could also baste the pieces individually together before sewing. As I was trying to get this done quite quickly, I didn't bother. Once I fixed a few fabric tucks, it was then time to do some more fabric trimming. I again used my pinking shears to do this. I was then able to turn the whole thing right side out and start ironing and steaming the bag into the correct position. The nice thing about this foam is that it is quite easy to manipulate and to make it sit in any way you want it to. With a little bit of time and patience, I was able to iron and steam the bag to sit nice and crisp.
Okay, so a little while later now, I have finished pushing the lining inside the bag, so you can see it's all fully lined. I have my little bag here. The only opening left is along here because it's a straight edge. It's pretty easy to just fold it in, and I'm going to probably be doing some top stitching along the front of the bag too. I also, if I come in closer here, you can see that I sewed the snaps into the bag, so when the bag folds over, they will just snap into place. See here, like that. Kind of holds. Can you hear it? So I just have a lot more pressing left to do. I've done some, and it's already, you can see on the sides, it's already looking a lot smoother, a lot nicer. I'm just gonna kind of keep ironing it until I'm happy with it. And then once that is done, I'm gonna take it back to my sewing machine and just do a top stitch along this edge here, because the lining is wanting to kind of flip up out of the bag right now, but we want it to stay nice and smooth like that. So just a bit of top stitching there will look nice, and same thing with along the edge. Once that's done, we're going to attach the strap. So I sewed this last night. It's just one long piece that I have looped onto this retractable buckle here, and that way I can adjust the length of the strap. And then either side is going to be attached with these rectangular hoops. So I'm going to have a little flap of fabric here. I'm going to do some decorative crisscross stitching, and then that loop will be attached to this, and then will be attached to another rectangular loop on the other side of the bag. So that's how I'm gonna finish that up. And then once that's done, the last little bit to do will be to attach the button.
So as I was saying, I went ahead and sewed along the edge of the body of the purse. Once that was done, I started sewing the two small straps for either side of the purse to attach the rectangular loops to hold the shoulder strap. I did this by sewing a loop just smaller than the inside of the metal loop. I pulled it right side out, gave it a press, and looped them through the metal rectangles. I then attached them to either side of the bag. Each one is sewn on with a rectangle along the edge of the strap and a cross through it. That way it is nice and secure.
Okay, so this is where I'm at with the bag now. It's pretty much done. All I have left to do is to add the little button right there. So I'm just gonna take a little piece of thread and take a needle and sew it on, and I'll also sew through both sides of the fabric so that this snap is really nice and secure. I also went along and sewed along this edge here, and I also did these 2 stitches along the inside here, and that just helped keep it a little bit more sturdy, just like that. And I have the straps on. So yeah, it's like 98% done. I just gotta add the last little button and we're good to go. Okay, so it's another day of working on Kiki's accessories. So I've come up with this pattern for making her little red box radio thing. And I thought, how cool would it be if I made it so that my phone fits inside? So I was gonna just buy a box that was about the right size. I even went and just got some crackers because I was like, oh, that'd be a perfect size box. And then I thought, no, I'm gonna make my own. So what I did is I ended up making a front and a back, and I have them creased so that they fold, and I have some foam on the inside so it's kind of padded for my phone. So this will just fold like this, just like a box. You can just look at any old box to figure this out, like that. And then the phone will fit inside, and then this, like this. And I'm just gonna glue up all the sides so that it closes nice. And then I made a little strap. This is adjustable so I can fit it to the broom, and I'm just going to hot glue it onto the side here once I hot glue the whole box closed. And then I cut some little pieces of foam just to kind of show as the little levers for on top of the box. So these will just get glued. These will just get glued up here. And then I'm just gonna paint with some just acrylic paint the face of the radio and the little black dots. So other than that, that's pretty much ready to go. I just basically have to assemble it. So to explain a little bit of what I did here is, this is actually fabric. It's the same red fabric that I'm gonna make her bow out of. And what I did is I just took a root beer box and cut it to the right shape, and then I used iron-on interfacing to fuse the fabric to the box, and then cut it out so it's all nice and clean. And then I did the same thing for the foam, so there's a little bit of iron-on interfacing that's gluing it to the box, just to explain kind of how I got to this point here. And then, like I said, I'm just gonna glue these sides together and it should be good to go.
While I was gluing it, I tried not to add too much glue, but it did spill out in some places. I just took my seam ripper to scrape away any excess glue that happened to stick out from the seams. And then once it was cooled, I took an alcohol-based marker in a matching red color and went over the glue residue to hide it a bit better. I then did this entirely out of frame, but I went ahead and I glued one end closed as I only needed to access it from the top to insert my phone. Once that had dried, I went ahead and attached the strap I showed you before to the top side of the box, again tucking away any excess glue that escaped. With the base of the box done, It is now time to add some of the details. I used a fine tip marker and lightly marked out the design of the radio on the face of the box. Then, using some basic acrylic paint, I used a small paintbrush and started adding the radio face and speaker dots.
Okay, here we are now. So I'm done painting the box. So I did all the little black dots and the little radio tuner screen. I just did this with a coat of acrylic paint. Did a pretty decent job. I mean, I didn't fuss too much over it. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add these little bits of foam that I cut out along the top there and there. And then this will be 100% done.
With the second foam button attached, the radio purse is now finished.
Okay, so next up is the bow. So the first thing I did is I went to my local grocery store and I picked up a simple headband and bow. This one is in red, but it doesn't have to be in a matching color, as I'll show you in a minute. The first thing I did was rip off the bow. There was a bit of glue left on it, but again, that's not going to matter because we're going to completely cover this. So first up, we're going to sew a tube of fabric to cover this. It doesn't have to be super tight, but you do want it somewhat fitted, and then we'll just close that off. And then we're going to take a big rectangular piece. This is folded in half here. And you're going to leave a little opening here. And you're going to sew up the sides. And then you're going to flip it right side out. And then once it's pulled right side out, you're going to pull it like this into a bow, and then you're going to sew up another tube of fabric, and that is what's going to turn it into a bow. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to tack it onto the headband, and that will be our bow. Nice and simple, but again, I'll go through the steps of what I do and show you how I sewed it together. So let's get to it.
So again, I start off with sewing a small tube to cover the existing headband. This is totally optional if, like me, you happen to find a headband in a matching red color. I just wanted to go that extra mile and make sure everything matched perfectly. Once the tube was turned right side out and given a quick iron, I was able to pull it on the headband. With a little bit of gentle finessing, I was able to get it to fit nice and flush against the headband and look quite nice. All I had to do was take a needle and thread and hand sew the inch or so I left open closed. I then went ahead and sewed a slightly wider tube for the center of the bow. Again, pulling it right side out and ironing. I then set this aside. Then we want to take the large rectangle and sew along the edges, leaving a few inches open in the center so we can turn it right side out. I trimmed off the excess seam allowance, turned it right side out, and it's also given a good press. Now that all of our bow pieces are sewn together, it's now time to assemble. I started with trimming the center bow strip down to size and tucking the raw edges inside the tube on one end. You are then going to gather down the large rectangle like this. making sure that the top and the bottom turn of the bow is facing away from you. I marked the center of the bow to keep these gathers even, but if it isn't perfect, you probably won't notice. Once I was happy with the gathers, I took my needle and thread and did a few stitches to keep them in place. You then want to take the center bow loop you made before and cover the center of the bow, tucking the opposite raw edge into the folded edge we prepared before. This is also sewn together by hand. Before you cut your thread, you're also going to want to sew the bow to the headband in the same way. I went over it several times across the face of the headband to give the bow a bit more structure and to hold it up on its own. But once that is done, your bow is now complete. And with that, everything is now complete for my Kiki's costume.
It isn't in my bones. It isn't something I'm searching for. I know it isn't easy, but you need me like I need you.
Leave a comment down below and let me know what you'd like to see next. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on those notifications to know when I post a new video. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.